Hello dear researchers and EFL instructors. Today I'm going to delve into variables in research, how we can use them. For example, how we can manipulate some of these variables and how we can control some of them in our study. Let's start with definition of variables. In order to carry out any sort of measurement, we need to think about variables. That is, characteristics that vary from different person to person, text to text, and object to object. Variables are features or qualities that change. What we are ultimately doing in experimental research, especially in applied linguistics and TEFL, is exploring whether there are significant relationship between variables and a consonant or not. Well, the independent variable is the one that we believe may cause the result. The independent variable is manipulated to determine its effect on the dependent variable. For example, let's have an example. I'll clarify it. Does feedback type affect performance? Here, feedback type is independent variable and performance is the dependent variable of study. It means that we will manipulate feedback type, the types of feedback we will have in our class, for example, classroom context, in order to investigate its effect on performance of our EFL learners. The dependent variable is the one we measure to see the effects that the independent variable of study has on it. Sometimes we will have the dependent variables that they'll be manipulated, and we want to investigate the effect of them on our dependent variables. The dependent variables are heart of our study. Example can be like this. This research question, for example, how long you sleep affects your test score. Here, how long you sleep is an independent variable, and the test score is the dependent variable of the investigation. It means that we will divide, sleeping hours of our participants, and we will explore how it can affect our participants test score before, for example, their final exam. A moderator variable, we can say a moderator variable is a type of variable, independent variable, that may or may not be the main focus of study. They may be our main focus or may not, but which may modify the relationship between the independent variable and the dependent variable. Then moderator variables will modify the relationship between our independent variable and dependent variable. Of course, moderator variables can sneak into any type of research studies, and without the researcher realizing their importance. Next one is intervening variable. There may be variables that interfere with the actual results we are seeking. These variables are known as intervening variables. Intervening variables are similar to moderator variables, but they are not included in the original study, either because the researcher has not considered the possibility of their effect, or because they cannot be identified in a precise way. Sometimes there are some variables we cannot identify them. The researchers may not have ability to recognize them, and they may interfere with the actual results of our study. Last one is control variable. When conducting a research, one ideally wants to simply check the effects of independent variable that will have on dependent variable, but there are some factors, let me say other variables that affect the results of our study. Whenever possible, researchers need to identify the possible factors and control them somehow. One of the ways is to eliminate the variable completely. This is what Mackey and Gass mentioned. Also, you can use other types of methods as array, Lazarton, and other eminent authors mentioned them. But the best way is to just eliminate them. Once, for example, you conduct a research, you may want to control the gender of your participants. You want to eliminate the, for example, male EFL learners. So it will be considered as your control variable. The last A key term, it's not a variable, but I wanted to mention it, is operationalization. You know, in many instances in second language and foreign language, it is difficult to measure variables so directly. Because why it is that? Because the researcher provide working definition for them. Otherwise, it can be impossible to define them. An operational definition allows a researcher to operate or work with the variables. You know, operationalization allows measurement. Um, what is operationalization in simple term? We can say that once we have a variable, but it is vague. In order to conduct the research, we should limit it. We should operationalize that variable. Let's have an example. Example is this. We need to operationalize amount of input because this term is vague. Then amount of input itself is vague, so we should operationalize it. So amount of input could be operationalized as years of exposure in this case. So once we conduct any research and we want to focus on amount of input, we can operationalize it to years of exposure to that target language. Well, this was the definition and example of operationalization. Hope that this video can be practical for you. Once you conduct any type of research, variables are very important and you should consider them in your study, be if it is moderator variable, control variable, or dependent and independent variables. Thanks for your time.